From atop this wooden pier, I cast my fishing line as far as I could. It didn't go that far, and man, was it close to getting snagged on the barnacles. I took back the line, and no matter how many times I cast it, the line would always end up just a few feet away from the pillars. So I gripped my hands tightly, to the point that it started to hurt my palms and fingers. But all that tight grip ever did was cast that line even closer to the barnacles. I know I had to swing the line further, but it's a long drop to the water and I did not want to accidentally let go of this fishing rod, especially since it was just borrowed. Yup, that's what I was worried about. So I cast my line, again, and again, and again, tightly gripping the rod more and more to the point that it feels like my fingers were about to lock into place. It would have been the very definition of insanity had it not been for a man, decades my elder, coming along and telling me the solution to my conundrum. Extend your arms, don't bend, and let go of the line when you reach the maximum momentum, he said. I did what he told me. I loosened my grip and straightened my arm. It didn't really change the results, and I was ready to accept the reality that I could never do a proper swing. Then the old man gave me another piece of advice. Don't be afraid to lose that fishing rod. If you're always afraid, you won't be casting that line very far. That last advice resonated with me. Following that, I slowly let go of my fear and unconsciously started loosening my grip. It took a bit of practice, but I managed to get the hang of the swing, and eventually I managed to properly cast my line, as in it really went further away. So as I stood there and waited for something to take the bait, I had an epiphany, and a metaphor began to form in my head. Up until that day, I was working for a company that was starting to become more and more stressful to work at. You know, I should have resigned sooner, but I didn't have any job to fall back on, so I persevered. It went to a point where my mental health was almost shattered, which was essentially my cue to finally resign, even without a job to fall back on. To turn it back around to fishing, well, I was gripping the fishing rod too tightly, to the point it was already so painful to hold and cast my line. And yet I kept casting, even though it could only barely reach a few feet away from the pier. I was so worried about financial stability that I put up with a lot of things I didn't like for far too long. I bent my arms and further tightened my grip, fearing I'd drop that fishing line of stability. But in doing so, I caught no fish, and, well, actually, I could never catch any fish since my line was so close to the pier. Only by loosening my grip and taking that risk of accidentally dropping my fishing rod into the water was I finally allowed to not only catch some fish, but also experience a sense of freedom. Freedom from my worries, my anxiety, and my doubts. I simply cast my line as best I could, and it felt great to finally do it right. And now as I stare at my line in the water, a wave of relief surges through me as I could feel inner peace.